When we think about huge historical events like World War II, our minds usually jump to the big battles and the famous generals, right? But history, well, it's also lived out on a much smaller scale, street by street, by regular people in regular towns. And that's exactly the kind of story we're diving into today, how this one small English port, Dartmouth, somehow ended up right at the very heart of the war. And just look at this. This isn't a picture from the London Blitz. No, this is Duke Street in Dartmouth, a quiet port town, really, known more for its naval college than for being on the front lines. So the big question is, how on earth did it end up looking like this? That's the story we're going to unpack. So before the bombs started falling, there was the preparation. And this wasn't some gradual shift. Like the rest of Britain, Dartmouth had to transform itself from a peaceful little community into a fortified town. And it had to happen, like, yesterday. Now, the first line of defense wasn't the professional army. It was the town's own people. Civil defense was this massive volunteer effort. We're talking about your neighbors, the shopkeepers, the teachers, the fishermen, all of them, now trained up as air raid wardens, firefighters, and medics, all working to protect their own community from the attacks they knew were on the way. What's so wild about this slide is just how personal it makes the threat feel. This wasn't some far-off abstract war anymore. It was the daily reality of practicing how to survive a poison gas attack. Just imagine kids all over town learning these 4 steps by heart. It just goes to show you how every little piece of civilian life was becoming militarized. And you can see just how fast everything changed. In just a matter of months in 1940, the whole town was plunged into darkness with the blackout. Public shelters were being planned out, and get this, they even removed all the street signs to confuse any potential invaders. The war had officially arrived in day-to-day life. Okay, so preparing was one thing, but actually enduring years of war, well, that required a whole different kind of strength. This next part is all about resilience, sacrifice, and a really incredible sense of community spirit. So this slide, it really shows 2 sides of the very same coin. On one side, you've got the ration book, a constant daily reminder of the hardship and scarcity that everybody was facing. But then on the other side, you see the community's amazing response. Events like Worship Week, where people would come together with parades and dances, creating this incredible outpouring of collective spirit to raise just staggering amounts of money for the war effort. And let's just pause for a second on what that scarcity actually meant. I mean, look at this weekly allowance from 1941. 1 ounce of cheese. That's about the size of a pair of dice for a whole week. 2 ounces of butter. This wasn't just some inconvenience. It literally shaped every single meal for every family for years. And it's so important to remember that while people were giving up food and comforts at home, they were also being asked to give their money. There were funds for Spitfires, fundraising weeks for warships. The community raised thousands and thousands of pounds, an enormous sum back then. It just shows this powerful, unwavering commitment to the fight. The town had prepared, and it had endured. But in 1942, the war stopped being about getting ready and became a brutal, terrifying reality. The Blitz was about to come to Dartmouth. So there were 2 major attacks. The first one, in September 42, was more of a strategic strike against military and industrial targets. But that second one, in February 1943, that one was different. It happened on a Saturday morning, and it struck right at the very heart of the civilian town. This here was a prime target. The Britannia Royal Naval College was a famous symbol of British sea power. The raid caused some serious damage, and tragically, it wasn't just the buildings that were hit. 1 cadet and 1 member of the Women's Royal Naval Service were killed. The bombs also slammed into the town's industrial heart, the Philip and Son shipyard. Now, this company was busy building and repairing vessels for the Admiralty. Taking it out was a direct blow to the war effort, and it left the workshops as just a twisted mess of steel. And this brings us right back to that first image we saw. This is the result of that February 1943 raid. At 11:30 in the morning, bombs fell on shops and homes. This wasn't a military target. This was where people lived and worked and did their shopping. The destruction was just devastating. It's one thing to see ruined buildings, but the real cost, well, that was human. These are just some of the names of those who were killed that morning. Carol Grant was only 5 years old. Joseph Ashe was just 13. These were ordinary citizens whose lives were just cut short in an instant. After the tragedy of the Blitz, Dartmouth's role in the war was about to pivot, and pivot dramatically. The town went from being a target on the defensive to becoming a top-secret launchpad for the invasion of Europe. A whole new chapter was beginning.
To really get a sense of the scale of this change, just look at this number. Over 4,000 American GIs descended on this small Devon town. I mean, can you imagine the impact? The town's population just exploded. Its pubs and streets were suddenly filled with American accents. Its entire character was transformed, almost overnight, into this massive, bustling military base.
And this is what that looked like. The quiet River Dart estuary basically became a parking lot for the instruments of invasion. Landing ships, troop carriers, all the machinery of war, filling up every single available inch of water, all of it hidden away, getting ready for the largest amphibious assault in history. But even the buildup was filled with peril. This is the U.S. landing ship tank 289. It was attacked by German S-boats during a training exercise just a few weeks before D-Day. It's a really stark reminder that the danger was absolutely constant, and the stakes were incredibly high. And so we reach the climax of the story. After years of preparation and sacrifice and tragedy, this small town was about to play its part on the biggest stage of the war. This right here, this is what it was all leading to. On D-Day, thousands of American soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division boarded their ships right here in Dartmouth and set sail for Normandy. They were one of the spearhead forces that landed on Utah Beach. History was literally being made from this very harbor. And it wasn't just the Americans either. Dartmouth became this truly international hub. You had Free French forces, you had Canadians, British, and Americans all working together here, creating this powerful coalition in this tiny corner of England. All of them focused on one single goal, the liberation of Europe. And less than a year later, this was the news that finally arrived. Germany has surrendered. For the people of Dartmouth, after years of blackouts and rationing and bombings and secrets, the war in Europe was finally over. The immense sacrifice had led to victory. The story of Dartmouth is such a powerful reminder that the greatest moments in history aren't just headlines. They're lived experiences. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What untold stories of courage, of sacrifice, and of resilience are waiting to be discovered in the history of your own town?